Hello everyone! I am Alice of KHR Arts and Cloud Orchid Publishing, and today we are going to talk about, no really, you really have to edit your manuscript. So let's get into it. I have done a ton of other videos about this particular topic, and unfortunately, here we are discussing it again. Because once again, on Facebook, on the writers groups there in particular, although this crops up in many other places, it's mainly there. People who complain about the cost of editors, of how hard it is to edit their manuscript, do they even need to edit their manuscript, all of that. I'm here to bring you the bad news of yes, you do in fact need to edit your manuscript, and if you can afford it, you really should hire an editor. So what exactly does this mean? It means that once you have completed your manuscript from once upon a time all the way to the end, you have to sit down and actually edit your manuscript. So this means going over it with a fine-tooth comb multiple times, more than once, and having to edit it for grammar and punctuation and spelling mistakes, for making sure that you don't have plot holes, that your character development makes sense, that your scenes make sense, that you don't just all of a sudden plop your reader in the middle of nowhere and they don't know how they got there or where they're going, to make sure that your story, if it requires any sort of research, where if it's, hard nonfiction, if it's historical fiction, or even if you're borrowing stuff from other cultures, from other time periods, whatever have you, to make sure that you are portraying those, whether correctly, whether accurately, or at the very least making sure that you're not being offensive. All of that requires editing, and you have to look over it more than once, and honestly, having another pair of eyes look at it is best. So I have talked about this in one of my other videos, that there is this really troubling trend going around. This whole idea of you should be the only one to touch your story. So it's this very weird idea of that you should do 100% everything yourself, that nobody else should do any part of the process of publishing your book. Otherwise, you're not a real author. And I'm here to tell you, no, absolutely not. No, that has never been a thing. You absolutely should enlist the help of other people to help you make sure that your book is at professional quality. If you're not good at editing or you don't want to do editing, hire an editor. If you don't know how to do book layout or you're not good at it, hire a layout artist. If you're not an artist and you don't know how to put together a good book cover, hire a book cover artist. Like, please, hire people that know what they're doing, or at the very least, enlist some people that can give you some solid advice and solid resources. And as I've said so many times in other videos, you don't need to be a chef to know that the soup sucks. If you can't hire an editor, absolutely find a friend who at the very least likes reading, ask them to read over your book. They can give you the broad strokes of, hey, this part didn't make any sense. Hey, I don't understand why this character did A, B, C. Hey, you've got a ton of spelling errors in this manuscript. Again, you don't have to be a world-class editor to be able to point out basic stuff like that, which I know it sounds Captain Obvious, but these things can be easily missed, especially when you're in the throes of creativity. You're gonna have a lot of craziness all over the place in your first pass at editing your manuscript, which is why it's important to do it multiple times, because you're going to not find stuff. Each time you're going to find stuff that you're like, how did I miss that? It's crazy. And they'll even go to print, even with the most professional, revered publishing houses. Typos will happen. Continuity errors will happen. There have been books where people have made fun of that the main character starts off with having blue eyes and then somewhere along the line they have brown eyes all of a sudden. Like, this kind of stuff happens. It's easy to miss. And the more eyes you have on it, the better chance you have of catching this stuff. The other troubling trend that I see that is just absolute gatekeeping snobbery run amok to absolutely the extremes of crazy bananas land is this idea of that a real author will get it right on the first try. Thankfully, this has not been a trend that's really caught on so much as I've seen a very weird group of people that think this, but let's make sure it stays that way and it doesn't catch on, because this is absolutely not a way to publish your book or be seen as a professional author in any capacity, is not doing any editing whatsoever. That they are trying to, recreate the whole Jack Kerouac mythical scroll where he did it all in one go, handcuffed to his desk, drinking coffee and taking party favors while pounding away at his typewriter, and he wrote it all the way from Once Upon a Time to the end all in one sitting. I'm so tired of that stupid myth. It's not real, okay? First of all, it's not real. I got to see the scroll for myself in real life. I can guarantee you he did not actually handcuff himself to a desk, and he did not do it all in one go. He simply made sure that it was one continuous roll of paper on a typewriter. That was about it. He definitely didn't sit there and do it all in one go. That would be physically impossible. Second of all, that is not a thing to aspire to, because I have read the manuscript that they printed where it is the literal, exactly the way the scroll is. Holy crap. Are there spelling errors and grammar errors and just incontinuities and craziness galore? The final product was edited and made into a real book, and it is far more readable than the original. The original just sounds like Looney Tunes bananas, which honestly, most manuscripts sound like Looney Tunes bananas the first go around. So it is not a badge of honor to be like, oh, I wrote it and I didn't touch it. It's beautiful in its brilliance and its rawness and whatever. Unless it's like an expression piece that you want this to be like a performance art sort of thing where it's a standalone art piece and it's not meant to be a polished book. That's a whole different discussion, and I'm not exactly an expert on the abstract art world or anything like that, so I'm not about to touch that subject. But in terms of putting out a properly polished, professional, published book, you have to edit your book. This whole weirdness of not editing your book, I don't know where this comes from, but it needs to stop. Like, honestly, it really, really, really needs to stop, because it's just silly. It's just silliness on its face. It really, truly is. I know it sounds all lofty and arty, and it makes for good conversation in hoity-toity coffee cafe. Sure, be as weird as you want in your musings about what it is to be a writer and la 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 and whatever suppositions you want to have. But when it comes to this as a business, and making sales, and reaching readers, edit your manuscript. No ifs, ands, or buts. The end. Do it. And I know some people may be like, why are you beating this dead horse? Why do you care so much? I care because this whole not editing your manuscript thing, which on the other flip side of the coin, not the do I'm so smart crap, is the laziness, the grifters, the people who just vomit out a manuscript, whether through their own hand or some amalgamation of AI crap, and just throw it up on Amazon or whatever have you and call it a day, is just as bad. And because of these two ends of the spectrum of extremism of, I'll come out and say it, it's crap. Both ends, it's crap, because you chose to put out a not polished piece. And people see that and they expect a polished piece. And then what they get is anything but. And then that not only looks bad on you, it looks bad on other self-published authors. And that's where this whole thing comes from, where then you have the old guard spouting about how self-published authors are not real authors. And it's because that pool is tainted by these people who think either they're too good to edit their manuscript or they're lazy grifters of some form. And so then it kind of ruins it for everybody else. And thankfully, self-published books are becoming more popular via Book Talk and Bookstagram. And a lot of them are even getting put in professional bookstores like Barnes & Noble, which really, really helps. But there still is that undertone of unprofessionalism because of all this other crap that's put out there. And so it's this idea of, yeah, you putting your manuscript out there unedited looks bad on you, but you have to also recognize that the world we live in today, this also affects your fellow authors. this also makes them look bad. So it's not just on you. And it's a very selfish decision on your part to not just make yourself look bad, but to make everybody else look bad too. To be honest, of course, we have to go to realism in that I'm sure the do-to-do snooty people don't care about anyone outside of themselves, and I'm sure the grifters don't care about anyone outside of themselves. So this is more for a plea for the people in the middle that are trying to figure out what are they supposed to do as a first-time author. Please, for the love of God, edit your manuscript. If not for yourself, for the community at large, so that we can all, all boats rise with the tide. Let's all make each other look good. Let's all make sure our manuscripts look good so that everybody else's manuscripts look good too. And this is such a big issue because it's just so disheartening to see so many readers talking about the main talking points now are not about this story or that story or, I didn't like the writing for this story. I didn't like the plot line for this story. No, it's about, you know what? This author, just spelling errors everywhere. It's not well written. It's clear this was a rough draft. Those are things you don't want to hear. And the fact that those are the most common criticisms that I see online again and again and again, readers saying is really bad, y'all. It's not good. The fact that quality of books just overall has just taken a nosedive is bad. Unfortunately, this is a double-edged sword in that self-publishing enables people to be able to get past the gatekeeping of the traditional publishing companies, which unfortunately have a history of being sexist and racist and all the isms, gatekeeping against people who aren't white old men, to be perfectly frank. That's kind of how the publishing industry has been for hundreds of years now, and being able to get different perspectives and different voices out there from people who would have previously been kept out of the pearly gates of the publishing house is wonderful. But then it also lets all the trash in too. When you're sitting down and you have penned the end on your manuscript and you're wondering what's the next step, the next step is to edit your manuscript. It should absolutely be nowhere near, hey, I should publish this, until you have looked at that thing to the point that you hate it. And I know that sounds extreme, but literally, you did a good job editing your book once you get to the point where you're like, I hate this thing. I want it out of my face. I never want to read this story ever again. That is when you know you've done a good job editing your book. That is to the point that you have torn apart your book and reassembled it so many times and edited it to oblivion that now it is ready for a reader. Now you can either self-publish it or send it to a publisher or send it to a literary agent. Once you hate it and you don't want to look at it anymore, that's when you've done a good job. Absolutely, if you are sitting there and you are so excited about your book and you're like, it is the bestest book ever. Nope. You haven't edited it enough. You probably haven't even started editing it. So long as you are excited about your book and you love it, you haven't done a good enough job of editing it. You need to hate that thing. And then by the time that you finally get to that it's a book and you are holding it in your hands, that's when you love that book again. That's when you get that rekindling of your excitement and love for that book again, is when you are finally holding it in your arms. The editing process, nah, that's the ugly hard part. That's when you hate that thing. And I know that sounds daunting and that sounds horrible, but honestly, that's being a writer. That's being an author. And you cannot skip that step. That's the problem with today, is so many people want to skip past the hard part of doing literally anything. And that's why the AI garbage has gotten so popular, is because it lets people think that they can skip the hard part. And in some processes, yes, it can help you skip the hard part, and that can be beneficial to you. For instance, in these videos that I do, it's not generative AI, because there are different types of AI. And typically when I'm talking about AI garbage, it's generative AI. But there's also AI processes like in this video. This is a green screen behind me. and I'm projecting my logo like that on the green screen, but I have disappeared the green screen behind me, and the fact that the AI knows not to edit out me and my chair and stuff, to only edit out the green screen. That is a form of AI. I'm not gonna sit here and try to color around and manually mask and do all sorts of shenanigans. I'm just gonna green screen it up. Those are processes that absolutely you can skip the hard part, because we just don't need to do that anymore. However, you cannot skip the hard part of a creative process like writing. It's like saying that you want to skip the creative process of painting or drawing and being like, drawing's hard. I just want to have the art piece. I don't want to draw it. You know what you do in that case? You commission an artist to draw it for you. That's how you skip the hard part. With being an author, if you really hate editing, you just really don't want to do it, hire an editor. Have them do it for you. That's how you skip the hard part. But you are still having a human being look at it. Because I guarantee you, AI doesn't know what it's doing. It just doesn't. And it's proven time and time again that it is not the tool that we think it is. While yes, it can be used for plenty of things if we use it correctly, and even still with using it, we still need a human being in order to guide it to get the results that we need. I mean, just recently we had in the news that the AI that the Tesla cars use doesn't know what it's doing, in that it, Wile E. Coyote Looney Tunes style, plowed through a painting of a road because it thought it was a road. This is what I'm talking about with you can't trust AI to just magically do stuff for you, because it doesn't actually know what it's doing. It only knows how to do what it's programmed to do, and there are limitations to that. It's not a magic wand. It doesn't know how to edit a story for you. It only knows how to do stuff within the parameters of what it's been programmed to do, and you don't necessarily know what those parameters are. And then also with how it's rapidly changing, you don't know what those changes are, so it could edit your manuscript into something completely crazy and bizarre. And if you don't have the sense to look over it, you're going to have a whole bunch of crazy gobbledygook. And in fact, a lot of times when people try to run their manuscripts through AI crap, they end up having to do more work fixing all the AI crap than they would have had to do if they had just edited their manuscript themselves or hired somebody to do it for them. With creative processes, there is no replacement for an actual human mind to analyze these things, to be able to actually use imagination and use reasoning and to be able to use situational awareness. AI does not have any of these things. It only knows how to plug in this goes here, this goes there, based on what it's programmed. So I'm sorry, I hate to break it to you. You 100% have to do the hard thing. Either that or just don't be an author. There are people who write for themselves where their writing never sees the light of day and they just write stuff and it makes them happy and it's for their personal enjoyment. I have stories that I've written just for me and they will never see the light of day, and that's okay. It's called having a hobby. And I feel like the art of the hobby has gotten completely lost in today's world of feeling that we have to monetize everything, that we have to make everything into content. You don't. If you want to just write stuff, you don't have to edit it. But at the same time, that means you can't go out there and sell it. You can't claim to give people a professional product that's not at professional quality. But you can absolutely do stuff just for yourself. So that is the question you have to ask yourself when you write the end on it. What is your goal? What do you want to do with this? Is it just for you? To make you happy? Is it just to share with your friends? Be like, look, I did a thing. Isn't it fun? Or is this something that you want out in the world for all to see, and most importantly for people to spend their money on? Because that's when you have to involve a whole lot of extra steps on that front. And I feel that people have really lost that there is that question there. There is that fork in the road and you have to make a choice. I feel that people have forgotten this choice exists. So please, if your goal is to make sales, please make sure that people are getting a product that is deserving of their money. I hope y'all found this video helpful. If you did, please be sure to give it a like. And if you're new, subscribe. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.